And good morning. It is time for the Mike Hewitt Show, brought to you by RenegadeRiver.com. And now your host, Mike Hewitt, who once again is raring to go.
Man, I've got the coffee silo in hand. I am ready. I think Ludwig has got us streaming on Facebook. He's nodding up and down like remember the puppy in the back window? That would be him. Listen, we've got Miles Bauer on with us, and our guest this morning is Carl Berry, who is helping with the Trump campaign. As I understand it, Carl Berry, you're a security expert and a former law enforcement officer. Do I have it right?
Yes, sir, you do.
Great. Well,
expert can be used too loosely sometimes, but yes, I do know a great deal about security.
Oh yeah, that's kind of, they say I'm a because I do the show that I'm an expert. Nuh-uh, not so much at all. So I get it. Listen, tell us a little bit. What is your vantage point in helping with the Trump campaign?
Well, I'm kind of a surrogate to speak out on the terrorism threat and getting people to try to understand exactly what Mr. Trump is saying in regard to the terrorism threat, because there's a huge amount of misunderstanding out there about what he has said, and he's right on point. And I'm a strong supporter in that part. When
you're talking about it, Carl, just so we get it, you're talking about, just for me to clarify for myself, he gave a pretty significant speech the other day. Now, the media was a little bit reluctant to report on it because, frankly, it made too much sense. Having said that, it was significant. And the few comments I heard from the other side was that it was extreme, etc. But when I drilled into it, it sounded like, I think the best term I've heard came from our co-host Miles Bauer. It was a common sense speech. Is that a fair statement?
That's more than fair. That's exactly accurate. A couple key points. First off, everybody's saying that he wants to suspend the immigration laws in regard to people coming from the Middle East. That's not quite true. He doesn't want to stop it. He wants to suspend it for a particular point of time so we can put better vetting systems in place to know who's coming into our country.
I often wonder if folks realize how the current vetting system works, and maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong, but just for a little background, I own a firearm store, a gun shop. And in the gun shop, we have a federal form called 4473. And I've referred to this from time to time on the show because it reeks with government's defiance of common sense. It asks a person, are you a felon? Now, if you were a felon, Carl, what would be your answer? And it asks, have you ever been adjudicated as mentally deficient? And what would be your answer had you have been? And when you read down this thing, it is so nonsensical. But tell me if I'm wrong. As I understand it, when they do the vetting system with folks from, say, Syria, they say, are you a terrorist? And the answer is probably no. Have you ever been associated with any group known to be involved in terrorist? When I read these questions, they slap with ignorance. That's my view of it.
You're correct. They, and again, I was in law enforcement for 36 years, and of course, you ask a person that committed a crime, did you commit the crime? They're going to tell you no.
Right.
I mean, it's commonplace. They're not going to, if somebody has a specific intent, they're not going to respond identifying that intent. They're going to respond quite the opposite.
Right.
Are you, the common question is, are you for peace? Sure, I'm for peace.
Yep.
On my standards.
Sure.
What standards are you talking about? So,
right. I'm for peace, providing you entirely agree with me, and let me reinvent your culture entirely.
I agree with you 100%. The questions on some of these vetting processes are not good. They just don't make sense, and they haven't. And I agree with you on that point totally.
The part that gets me, though, is the reaction to these things. Keeping in mind that first off, the position that Donald Trump advocated in his speech the other day had been in place for decades through 1991. But, if anyone that's watched when this show is broadcast, it is broadcast in other places with actual camera, you'd see that in the beginning of it, we always have a ship. And that ship is the ship that my family came over on in 1881, went to Ellis Island. And by the way, They didn't say, welcome to the United States, here's your free phone and your free housing and a check to get you started in a free business. And by the way, please maintain your own culture and ignore ours, or if you want, you can just stomp on ours. That wasn't the greeting that they got in 1881. They said, would you like to come to America and be part of a greater... It's so upside down that it almost just flatly defies gravity.
Yeah, you're absolutely, again, the immigration policies today and Mr. Trump's approach is probably the best I've seen. And I've been around the political world for many, many years. Of course, I'm a conservative on the Republican side, but he gave one of the best speeches on the immigration policy and how we need to fix it that I've heard in a long, long time. And I really believe that we need to move forward with that.
I absolutely agree. I'm concerned about the way the media is misinforming people, and they're not. They're purposely misinforming people, and if I don't give you all of the equation, I can't expect you to come up with the proper answer. That's kind of what my take is.
Well, the press, it's a constitutional question in relation to the press. I don't agree with the press on many, many issues. They've shifted from a reporting of the facts to a reporting of opinions on all pages of the press, of the mainstream press. They need to go back to reporting the facts and keep the opinions on the opinion page.
First off, obviously, I agree with you. This show is a commentary show, and we tell you up front, this is a commentary show. This is our opinions of the current events of our times, and in fact, on occasion, we've gotten into everything from Andrew Jackson to projections of what's going to be. But it's an opinion show. But when the media reports it, the days of Walter Cronkite, although, by the way, he was very biased, the days of someone trying to talk to the center and say, here's the news, this is it, make your own mind up, I don't know if we've ever seen those days. But the unfortunate part is you mentioned the Constitution. The Constitution provides them with the right to do what they're doing, but with that comes a responsibility. And you don't get one without the other. You've got to be responsible for yourself and be honest. And that's the part that the citizenry is going to have to force them to do it, because they're not going to be able to do it on their own accord. Miles, what say you?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the one thing that kind of jumps out at me, I know a lot of folks that I know were taken back by Trump's extreme vetting. And it's fascinating when you look back into history of the country. There was a law passed under Truman that was intended to guard against communism, but it also had a religious aspect to it. There was another act in the 1950s, and even as recent as Jimmy Carter, when he was dealing with the Iran student issue, he began invoking these laws. So when you hear the folks today say that this is extreme and that what Trump's talking about has never been a part of the country, it just simply isn't true. We've done it many times in this country throughout our history.
Irony being what it is that the laws that we're discussing and the protections from Truman and Carter, et cetera, were Democrat. That's who advanced them. And now they're extreme. And you go, no, they're really not. They're common sense, regardless of the party that brought them up. But these folks defy gravity. They really do.
Well, Mr. Hewitt,
yes.
In regard to what Mr. Trump is indicating, he is saying that, the principal governing admissions will only be those who support the values should be admitted to this country. When you go back to when the immigration process was started and people started coming into our country, they came here for the perfect purpose of coming into the country based on the principles and values of what we are and what they were. They wanted to be welcome into an area where they could express themselves and do the things they wanted. Mr. Trump is saying exactly that. He said we must define the ideological terms of our struggle and prevent the admission of those who oppose our values. That's the best statement I've heard in a long time. It's absolutely correct. And it goes right to the heart of the immigration issue.
It seems to me that there's two things that we're really talking about today, and you can either any of you chime in and tell me if I'm wrong, but on one hand, we're looking at protecting United States citizens, and I think that's the prime directive, the main goal of anyone that sits in the Oval Office, that their chief function is to protect the citizens of our Union of States. That's part one. Part two is whether we want to be a melting pot or a multicultural society. And folks, those couldn't be any more opposing concepts. Do you want to come to the United States and assimilate and be an American and contribute? And whenever I get into that, I get the push from the left that says, oh, you're being a racist. It's not racist. If you go to any restaurant, the restaurant that Miles and I used to own, as an example, and look at our menu, it was an American menu. But if you go down the list of things, most of it represented the cultures of the different folks that have come to the United States over our history. So I'm not looking at eradicating somebody's culture. I'm inviting folks to become part of a greater culture. That is the melting pot versus multiculturalism, which is racism. To me, it seeks to divide. It purposely says, you folks stay over there and keep your mouth shut. We'll tell you what we want to tell you while we go over and tell this these group, something entirely different. And by the way, we're going to ask them to shut up also. To me, these are two very distinct American views for the future. And I'm praying that multiculturalism fails and that the melting pot wins.
Yeah, I mean, it's true, Mike. It's like, when these Syrian refugees arrive, we're not trying to set up Syria here. We're attempting to continue to establish America. So if they want to come along with us and continue down the path with America, that is a completely different idea, to your point, than just setting up in a suburb somewhere and reestablishing Syria.
Which is what they've been largely doing, and it goes to, as I understand it, Carl, please tell me if I'm wrong, but as I understand it, it goes to some of Donald Trump's points, meaning, is your interest here? The questions are: where do you think that do women have an equal freedom? Do you agree with the concept that only one marriage? And so it's going down a list of, I hate to say a litmus test, but it's a litmus test. Are you trying to become an American citizen, or are you thinking, to Miles's point, that you can go make some community somewhere where it's Sharia law and our own police departments and indeed our own Constitution aren't welcome? And I think that's what Mr. Trump is trying to build a wall against, to protect our culture.
And I agree with you, Mr. Hewitt. It's continuously the press, the mainstream press, goes after the words that he says, and they don't understand the meaning behind what he's saying. And
right.
Basically, what he's saying, his goal is to instill into the newcomers, people coming into our country, pride in our institutions, our history, and our values. That's what he's really after. That's the meat of everything that he talks about.
I think what you just said there,
renewing the spirit of Americanism.
That's what you just said is exactly the problem with the media. They don't understand what he says. It doesn't matter if they understand it. They're supposed to report what he says and allow us to interpret it. Yeah, Am I right or wrong?
I think you're wrong. I mean, everyone can tell me I'm wrong here, but listen, I think the media wants a very different America than we do. Mm-hmm. It is, when I was young, and I used to believe this, by the way, I'd look at the two primary ideologies in America, left and right, and I thought, well, they want the same end result, they just have different paths to get there. I really believed that as a young person. Well, you know what? I'm 55 now, and that dream is over. There are two distinctly different views of what America should be, and I support the America that's delivered a higher standard of living to more people than in any other society, culture, or country in the history of mankind. And they want us to be France, where you can't find a public bathroom and everybody's rude. And I'm not interested in that. I'm not. So that's kind of, I think, the dividing line is how we want the country to be. Mm-hmm. They just flatly, the media I'm referring to, yeah. We got to be honest here. The media doesn't exist anymore. They're an apparatus of the Democratic National Committee. That's what they are. But that tells you exactly who the Democratic National Committee is, because we've learned a long, long time ago that what progressives are accusing you of is usually what they're in the middle of doing. the names that they call you are usually who they are. So, listen, Carl Berry, we're out of time, but as we go forward, please let me call on you again to get you back on and help us interpret some of these things that we run into.
I would be more than happy to. And Mr. Trump and I are on the same sheet of music. Like I say, I've been I was a police chief for 36 years. I've been in security for 15 years, and I'm a veteran also. So, yes, he is on the right track. We need to renew our Americanism, to help heal the divisions in this country.
Amen.
And he said that, and I agree with him.
Amen. Carl Berry, thank you very much for your service and for joining us this morning. And, folks, we'll be right back.
RenegadeRiver.com is new and used firearms, all priced to sell, plus ammo, reloading supplies, optics, clothing, lasers, and yes, tactical gear. RenegadeRiver.com, family owned right here in Michigan, because you deserve it.
Now, back to the Mike Hewitt Show on News Talk 1090 WKBZ and Talk 1230 WTKG.
And the Mike Hewitt Show is brought to you by RenegadeRiver.com. Segment 2 has started.
Welcome back. Listen, if you're just dialing in, we've got Ludwig von Wiedendorsky. I guess he's sitting side. Was that riding shotgun? Is that what it is?
If we're in Europe.
Yeah, and listen, folks, he plays hockey. You should have seen him drag himself in this morning. I felt bad for him. It looks like you were in a little bit of pain. You haven't done that in a couple decades, or what?
It's been a while, and shooting pucks, you didn't realize how many muscles you used to use.
It was fun to watch. And with us, our co-host, Miles Bauer, and, of course, Brian Thomas is keeping us on path. Ludwig, who are you waving at?
Gina's on. Greg Stevens is on.
Good people. I'm telling you, very good people. We're still working on Greg Stevens. He's a friend of mine, but he's on the Never Trump bus.
I got him a ticket.
I'm telling you, I think the world of him. He helped in my campaign. He's been a dear friend. Buys guns from me. I think the world of him.
Yeah.
But I don't get that part. Listen, one of the things I wanted to really get into today, and the point of this segment at least, is we've got riots going on, we've got propaganda, we've got misinformation, the talking heads, and I'm saying, I get it, but what's the path forward from here? Because it feels like Rome is on fire, and we're busy arguing over nonsensical things that are not possible and never will be, like the Gary Johnson thing I was discussing. I know folks support him, but listen, we've done the math on the show before. This guy's wildest fantasy would be to get to 15%. I don't think that's going to happen. I personally don't think he'll see double digit. But I also have done the math on what Ross Perot did. In fact, I sat and read the states that he flipped. And I look back and I go, what's the alternative? I get that some folks don't like Trump. I get it. I understand it. I even respect them, although I don't necessarily agree. I'm okay with it. But when I do the comparison and go, you got that or the Hildebeest? Who wants to have Jenny Granholm involved in her administration? What are we thinking? Honest to goodness, I don't get. When I look at the gravity, when I look at the sheer difference that's being presented by these two, one wants to literally erase our borders. The other one wants to install an actual vetting system that I believe we desperately need. If not for you and me, then for my grandkids. And I hate to be sanctimonious, but that's how I feel about it. If you don't care about us, if we got to get lost in this rancor of nonsense and throwing barbs back and forth at each other, please set it aside. I want to have an America, the America that Miles and I grew up in together. That's gone. I want to fight for it back. And so when I look at Donald Trump, no, he ain't perfect, but he appears to be fighting for some of that security to return to the United States. Miles, you watched this whole drama same as I did since the 70s. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that there's another element there that Trump brings to the table, and it was what initially attracted me, and that was we're not going to do the same thing over and over and over again that we've been doing in recent years. And I think this is what Hillary's kind of bringing to the table, is that she just wants to do the same thing that we've been doing for decades. And I think this is the attraction for me, is that Trump wants to go, time out, wait a minute. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is insanity.
Absolutely is. It absolutely is. But it feels to me, though, that with each election cycle, we slide down one more spiral turn towards the bottom or an abyss or whatever it is. I mean, we continue to slip further down the rope, and nobody seems to be saying what's at the bottom of the rope. And I've said this a lot to people that are arguing with me. I passionately believe that the real debate we're having here is nationalism versus globalism. And folks, I'm just telling you, I don't want a global government. The only way for a global government to function is to tear the United States down. That's the only possible way to get global governance. You're not going to raise up the rest of the world. Therefore, you've got to tear us down.
Well, England just fought back against
You're
it.
not going to surrender everyone else's or grant everyone else's liberties around the world. You're going to restrict our liberties, and we're watching that daily. And that's the real battle. It's bigger than Trump or Hillary. I believe passionately, we're in great peril. I do. The United States, as we know it, is in grave risk. That's what I think. That's what I see. When I think that there's someone like the Hillary that believes that what's happened on a global scale in the last 7 years is appropriate, that scares the bejeebers out of me, but not as much as that there's millions of people that agree with her, or they're at least unwilling to get beyond the political party dogma and actually look at the facts. And the same on our side, by the way. Neither side is perfect. On our side, we're arguing all kinds of things that, to me, right now, in terms of saving America, make no sense. We've got some evangelicals that are saying he's not a Christian. I got to tell you, I don't know what's in his heart. That's folks, I'm telling you. I'm looking you in the eyeball. That's not for you and me to decide. That's between God and Donald Trump. But right now, the United States needs somebody strong. We're going to get one of those two. I don't care who you're voting for. You can say, as a matter of fact, you're either going to have Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump sworn in on January 20th. You get to decide. Please don't screw up. It ain't going to be Gary Johnson. I don't care if he is wonderful. I don't care if it doesn't matter what he is. He's not going to win. So you have that choice. Which one is it going to be? That's where I'm at.
I remember the old phrase, sticks and bones.
Sticks and bones?
Or words, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
Yeah.
And that's what this campaign really is. Oh, Donald Trump says mean things. I'm not going to vote for him. Oh, so you're going to let the lady who kills people win.
Listen, here's the fun part about that. Ludwig, is that for years on Facebook, social media, and back in the old days when you just had a real conversation, I've heard people over and over, not like once or twice in passing, say, why can't those rotten son of a guns just say it like it is? Now they got someone that says it like it is, and they're going, oh my God, he just said it like it is.
Yeah, but you know what, Mike? I
that?
guess the one thing I would point out is that have you noticed the media won't actually report on what the meat or the substance of what he's saying? They only report on the offhanded remarks.
Right.
Because I think that they are afraid if they actually report what Donald Trump is saying,
right,
that he would get all kinds of following showing up. And I think they have to intentionally only go for his sarcastic comments because they can't actually report on what he's saying, because otherwise people would be showing up in droves.
They get so bad they just did it to Giuliani when he was talking about Clinton having the World Trade Center be blown up, or have a bomb go off, and then all the terrorist attacks we've had since Obama's taken over, and that we've been safe for 8 years, and they went, oh my God, he forgot about 9/11. How dare he? When he started out the entire thing about how since 9/11, the Bush kept us safe from 9/11 on. There was no inside our borders terrorist attack, and yet before that and after that, we've had multiple.
Listen,
and they've skewed his words to make it sound like he forgot 9/11.
It's about misinformation, which is that exact example. Is I listed as a show announcement is misinformation. They do it in different ways. They do it to Miles's point earlier when he listed the fact that what Donald Trump is asking for in terms of vetting is what we've had for 40-some years. So if it's extreme, we've been extreme for a long time, and they've had different variations of it since post-Civil War. So now we're talking approaching 150 years up until 1991. And all of a sudden, it's no longer politically correct. But that coincides with a handful of other things that suddenly got not politically correct, and the media never puts a string through it. But from the time forward that they didn't want any form of vetting, they started a different mantra, and that was you don't need ID to vote.
That's crazy.
And you go, wait a minute. You want anybody from the whole world to show up without, we don't care if they're terrorists. We don't care where they're from. We don't care if they want to come here and flip our country. So that's not politically correct to say that, Mike. But we want anybody to vote. You got a pulse, vote. You've already voted. Well, there's no limit on it. How many times would you like to vote today? It's insanity. And the folks that are now arguing over whether they're going to support Trump or not, they're the folks that have agreed with us on this topic for most of my life. And I go, really? Really? You're going to let the media do that to you? That's how I see it. The media is flatly deceiving you. You've been begging all this time to say, yes, I want someone that'll say it. Say it. He says it. Yeah, but he contributed to the Hillary something, who knows when. If you were a business owner in downtown New York City, which is the Democratic stronghold of the East Coast, and America financially, by the way, if you didn't play ball, you would be ejected from the ball game. It's that simple. And anybody with an ounce of common sense knows I'm telling you the truth. You don't got to like it. You don't have to like it. You don't even have to agree with it. But it's the truth. If you're going to play ball in New York City, everyone there is a Democrat in terms of elected office. How are you going to do business at that scale without going to dinner with Hillary Clinton when she's a senator in your state? Folks, you got to slow the navigation speed and don't let the media do this to you.
There's another side to that.
There's a bunch of sides to it.
He said it during the debate. Two things on that. One, yeah, I donated to Hillary Clinton.
Tom,
she
you're
was
right.
at my wedding.
Tom, you're right. Reality is reality. That's exactly true.
She was at his wedding. Why? Because she had to be. I love that statement. Two, he said, I donated to half of your campaigns out of the 17 guys that were on the campaign trail with him. So he donated to both sides. He had to. He's a business guy. We get it.
Right.
Like that. I get it. You get it.
Miles, you get it?
Yep. Remember, I was the first one on the train here, guys.
Listen, I got to tell you, I'm with some of the cruisers, by the way, just so I want to be a fair disclosure, because I got a lot of folks that have known me and been involved with me politically for a long time, right, Greg Stevens? And here's what I'm saying to you. This ain't my first choice. It's what we have, to quote Miles Bauer. This is what we have. So is he perfect? Nope. Do I wish I could get me a file and do some work on him? Yeah, I do. But that ain't how God made him. But one thing God did do is he provided someone who's an answer, the antidote to Hillary Clinton. And I desperately oppose globalism. And I desperately oppose the kind of ideology that Obama and her spin. I can't get it anymore. And forget ideology for a minute. This lady's a criminal. I mean, there are people dying around her. While I'm on the morning show this morning, someone's posting on my Facebook page about how the Assange lawyer got hit by a train. How many lawyers do you know that got hit? You just go, come on. That's 7 people inside, 6 weeks?
Yeah.
That are involved negatively towards her, that have shown up with bullets in their back, trains over their head. You go, this is the Clinton machine again. Welcome back to the 90s where morality is a non-issue. And we're worried about who Donald Trump married? Really? That's where we're going to put this at? I'm beside myself with fear for our Union of States.
We got the Supreme Court to worry about, and she's looking at adding Jennifer Granholm for administration already.
She's going to put Jennifer Granholm on the Supreme Court.
If you're in Michigan,
mark my words,
you are not willing to vote against just Jennifer Granholm.
Listen, you can add it to. You can add that to my. You hear Miles giggling. That's the plan. They're going to take that nutcase. You watch.
Oh, I believe it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm looking at Cruz. Like, Cruz, you should be a Supreme Court justice, lifetime appointment, best job you could get. And he'd be great at it versus Jennifer Granholm.
Well, she's not a constitutionalist.
She's Canadian.
Listen, why would you hold that against her?
Is that legal? Like, is that part? Are you allowed to be?
Yes. She just because she was born there, she came here. Cruz was Canadian. If that's
she's still Canadian. Like, she has dual citizenship.
I'm just telling you, if that's your mantra, then the folks that were anti-Cruz are with you on that because they'd say the same reason. I say she's not qualified because she rejects the Constitution. Miles, You're having
Yeah,
too
but
much.
you know
You're
what,
having
though,
way too
guys?
much fun over there, buddy. Well,
I'm telling you though, the bottom line here, to your point, setting Granholm aside for a second, the bottom line here is: are the never Trumpers, are they really pro Hillary? Is everything that we are pointing out, is it really that Trump is that bad that they'd rather see Hillary in there, and yet they call themselves conservatives?
no, I think
it is hilarious.
Well, I got to tell you, some of these people truly are personal friends. Some of them, like Greg, that I've talked about a few times now. Greg helped on my campaigns. I guarantee you, this guy is he's the real McCoy. But their view is that the way the Constitution and their directive is not to throw your vote away, to vote your conscience. And my view has been, well, okay, but the math says that doing that is a train wreck, to use a train analogy. And so there's the rub. Some of these folks are they truly, really are good, honest, conservative people. Some of them are truly honest, good libertarians, by the way. And they're looking at it saying, I can't do it. I'm going to vote for Gary, or I'm not going to vote, or whatever the rationale is. The problem with the math is that the math won't be denied. That's the problem that I have with it. I get the concept. I hear the term every single day. It's a principled vote. It may be a principled vote, but your principled vote is only going to assist. And I get unfriended or yelled at or called dirty names. Hurts my little feelings. And what are you doing, Ludwig?
Greg Stevens, Justice Granholm. No.
I
think that's the reason to get on the train.
But, Greg, that's the point. That is exactly the point, is that if you cast your vote in some other direction, that Ross Perot, we did the math. That's the best Gary Johnson can hope for. The Green Party's not going to get any legs. That won't help adjust the math. And when you pause and you go, really? This is what you want?
No, the question is, a lot of people have used the idea that, okay, if we vote for Gary Johnson, nobody wins, it goes to the House of Representatives. Who do you get then? The guy you didn't want. They're not picking Ted Cruz. They're going to pick somebody from the establishment that you're fighting against every day.
You're talking about for the Supreme Court?
No, for the presidency. Some people have had the theory that if Gary Johnson can pull enough, that this will go down to the United States House of Representatives.
The House of Representatives would never, ever pick Cruz or anybody anywhere near like him.
No.
They wouldn't. They would turn around and go, give me Jeb. Jeb, get up here.
So
or Kasich.
And that's what they're fighting against.
Kasich, bring your pointed-headed, mean-spirited self up on stage now. That's who, sorry. That's who they would bring up there. That's who they embrace.
Yeah.
That is the rub. It's what makes Donald Trump who he is, to say we're done listening to those nitwits.
And that's the hope, is that this will get to there and they'll pick somebody like Cruz. But you're right. They're going to pick Kasich or Bush, the people they were fighting against already. They're going to end up with.
Buddy of mine, Derek messages me on Facebook, listening to the show. Cruz is a Canadian too. I think he's talking to you.
Oh, I know.
I'm sorry.
But he denounced his Canadian citizenship.
Oh, good for him.
Back in, August of 2014?
I don't know. You get the point. You lost. That was checkmate.
No. So. No. He's from Texas.
Listen, folks, we got to go to a break. We're going to come back and do a little of an enigma. We'll be right back.
Renegade River, guns and ammo, and so much more. Old-fashioned service with surprisingly low prices. On M104 at the top of the new 231 bypass in Utica. Or find us at renegaderiver.com, because you deserve it.
This is News Talk 1090 WKBZ and Talk 1230 WTKG.
And this is the Mike Hewitt Show, brought to you by renegaderiver.com.
3, 2, 1, 0.
You have arrived to your final destination on your journey through reality. Welcome to the Enigma Report.
So I'm reading an article the other day, and the article is talking about taxi drones. And so I wanted to deviate, I won't probably be able to control myself, but I'm going to try to deviate from politics for a minute, just because I like to ponder about what the future can be. That's why I'm a Trekkie. I like to say, can there be a future? And if so, what's it going to? Don't shake your head at
Star
me,
Wars
Ludwig.
all day long.
Ah, that's trash. Bunch of little, terrible. Anyhow, so this is a drone, and the article, the general, the way the article was written, it talked about a guy building condos in some inner city somewhere, probably New York or Chicago or a place like that, and of course you see a big condo tower, and outside it looks like a small heliport, a small one, but it's in place of a balcony. And the purpose of it is that if you wanted a taxi, so say you want to go down to the restaurant, you call the taxi, dial.
Dial.
Yeah, dial. The kids are going, what do you mean dial? So you dial a taxi, and one of those drones lands on your balcony. You hop in, you press a button, a big GPS screen. You pop where it is you want to go, and the drone lifts off, goes over, and dumps you off where you want to go. Reading the article, they say that that was a Chinese-built drone to start off with. I think it said it can lift up to 260 pounds, fly 23 minutes. They're doing testing in Nevada right now to see whether our government, who is way more controlling than the communist government of China is, in terms of these things. So they're doing testing in Nevada to see if this thing can get approval. But Miles, I thought it was very interesting to look forward to see what kinds of things we can see in our lifetime, assuming we live a natural life. And it made me reflect back to, that's what he's showing pictures of it.
These are gondolas in Chicago they're talking about building.
Yeah, gondolas in Chicago. But it made me reflect back to when you and I were young, and we were discussing the possibilities of someday being able to have visual telephones and all that. And of course, I don't think that at the time, we're talking landlines with cords and all that, we probably didn't envision Dick Tracy's watch on your arm where you can literally have a visual phone with somebody else on their wrist in our time. And I say that because I think it's just a fascinating topic to say where are we at in this sea of technological change, and where can we go? One of the things we talked about off the air was that a friend of mine who talked about his mother that went out west on a covered wagon and flew home on a jet plane. And I think we're still at that. If we can keep our political wheels on the cart, we're still at a point where we can see those kind of huge leaps of advance. So Miles, what do you think about this topic?
Yeah, I was going to say, Amazon is exploring using drones so that when you order something on the web, they'll just load whatever your order is on a drone, and it just flies out to your house and delivers it. Not to mention the fact that we've got, driverless cars.
Right.
This is going to be a reality
soon,
and in some places already is a reality. And what's interesting about it, so something as simple as car insurance that, you and I have always had to deal with.
Right.
How does that impact an insurance company? Now, if you have driverless cars, doesn't that make car insurance virtually obsolete at some point?
A guy just died a few weeks ago on a driverless car.
Who did?
He was driving a Tesla, and the Teslas have that now, and you're supposed to still pay attention. And apparently he was watching a movie on his phone. The computer in the car saw the white of the trailer and thought it was open road, smashed the trailer, killed the guy.
Now, listeners messaging me, Ford and GM have announced technology to come. They're forecasting 2021, which is right around the corner, selling cars to the open market with no steering wheels. So, just to me, it's fascinating, the things that you can do, like Miles is talking about with getting whatever you just bought.
Flying car.
Huh?
I want my flying car.
No, but it will reinvent our economy. If you look at that's the bigger thing that maybe that's where the political connection is. But it's like Miles. To get to Miles, to go visit him is a fairly significant drive because Lake Michigan is here. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. So you got to go all the way down and come back up. If they've got drones right now at 23 minutes, it's not going to be long, I would forecast, where you could grab a taxi and be sitting at Miles's on his balcony landing in a relative short period of time. These are low level, so they're saying no license is required. You're not actually driving it; you're hopping in, and the computer's driving you. I don't. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to come.
Kind of like the Jetsons.
Kind of like the Jetsons. That's what I thought about when I was reading the article. So, and I thought 260. No, I can still get there. So I don't know.
Is that the weight limit?
260 is the weight limit. Is where it's at right now. And that provides you 23-minute flight. But listen, when I wrote America's Final Beginning, I included in it one of the technologies I wrote into the thing. Not trying to be a sci-fi, but I wrote in what I call the Raptor, and it was a personal pod, is what it was. And I did that back. I started writing that in 2008. So when I'm reading this, I mean, this is lighting all the candles for me. It's an exciting thing, and I think it's right in front of us. So same with computer power. I remember Miles and I back then, and you'll laugh at this, Miles, when we had, I think it was a Commodore 64, maybe a little bit more than that, but not much. Maybe even, it was actually before that. We were talking about the computers on board in Buicks, and a fellow that we knew said, why would we ever want a computer to go faster than that? What was that, 81 or 82, somewhere in there? And when I look at the computers that existed then versus your iPhone wristwatch you've got on Ludwig, I mean, that wristwatch is way more than anything that fellow was talking about.
There's more power in my cell phone right now than that was in the entire lunar lander.
Yeah, by far.
But listen, I'm not as ancient as you guys. But
you can turn his microphone off if he gets out of hand, Brian.
I joke around with my students because my phone's 64 gigabytes. To buy a 64 megabyte
right
flash drive or SD card for a camera,
sure,
15 years ago, 2001.
I've got 2 flash drives in this bag here that are way more.
Yeah, but 64 megabytes 15 years ago, $70, $80, $120.
Right.
Today you couldn't even take a picture.
But let me show you.
megabytes.
Let me show you how old Miles and I really are, because when him and I went to school together back in Wisconsin in a different millennia, remember the card drive computer, Miles?
Oh yeah.
I mean that talk about ancient technology. Did that thing actually do anything other than hum and punch holes in cards?
Oh, that thing.
That was about it.
I see one of those at the Smithsonian, I think.
Yeah, well, my sister, when she worked for Oakland County, and was in data processing. That's what her function was, and which was made her really in truth a data processing enterer. But at the time, everyone thought of her as a computer guru, and of course, those computers were immediately taken out to the back of the farm and thrown into the big hole. They didn't. I'm sure they did something, but it was beyond my understanding to see what they actually produced.
The question for all this, though, is, Mike, do we have too much regulation?
No, I don't.
To prevent us from growth like this?
Well, tell the story. You talked about, I don't know if it was Beck or somebody. but
Glenn Beck.
Yep.
He had 2 chalkboards, and one said U.S., one said China,
right.
And then he wrote idea.
At the top.
At the top, put a huge gap at the bottom.
So you got, just to make everyone picture, you got 2 chalkboards essentially.
Yep.
One with China, one with the U.S., and immediately underneath both U.S. and China was the word idea.
Yeah.
Right? And then
at the very bottom, he wrote product.
Right.
So it meant that it was finished, it was able for sale.
Sure.
He said in China, you have the idea, and then he drew an arrow from idea all the way down to product.
Right.
He said it's that easy in China. Come up with the idea, build the product. Done.
Right.
$1.30.
Right.
U.S. He started, drew a little arrow, and put something like FDA.
Sure.
Drew another little arrow, and then put some other government agency. And he probably had 7 or 8 layers between idea and product, and put $5.
Listen,
there's a difference between China and the U.S.
And it keeps on keeping on, because that's the $19 toaster story I told, where once you take out all the layers of tax that each of the corporations that were involved in creating that toaster were taxed, once you pull out those layers of hidden tax, your $19 toaster was a $3 toaster. Peace, Brian. So
China and them can compete better due to less regulation.
So you got a communist government that's able to compete better because they're not chock full of nonsensical, feel-good leftist BS.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a problem.
That's weird.
Because we actually have a higher technological base or pool of people like Miles Bauer on the line with us. There's a lot more folks like Miles here than there are there, but you folks are all jammed up dealing with all your government nonsense.
So can you trust the entrepreneur to keep the public safe? That's the argument.
Well, listen, if the outcome, it's like Renegade River. If I don't provide you with a good service at a reasonable price, I'll go out of business. It's just math.
True.
The government, they don't have to provide you a good service or at a reasonable price, which they can't. 87% administration fee is kind of hard to say is a good product, but they're not going to go out of business. If they run out of money, they just take more or print more or borrow more. Those are their three anthems to Trainwreck. So, Miles, you think we got a bright future technologically?
Well, I think some of that's going to be determined in what's coming up here in a couple of months.
Yep. That's kind of where I'm slowly getting at.
Because, I mean, remember Hillary wants more regulation, and Trump's already said he's going to reduce regulation.
I'm on with him. Listen, folks, find us on Twitter at Talk Mike Hewitt, and then also on Facebook at / The Mike Hewitt Show. Miles, Ludwig, Brian, thank you very much. Folks, thank you very much for joining us today. Plan on next Wednesday at 9 a.m., and we'll pick up where we left off. Thanks a lot. Talk to you then, folks.